let's make a start. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar called Introducing the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service. My name is Chris Kingsbury. I'm the National Partnerships Manager for the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service, alongside my colleague who's also joining us today, Beth Kimberley. So today is to provide you with an overview of the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service, and during which we will cover the various elements of the service. We'll discover the facts and stats around mental health, and we'll look at something called the Thriving at Work Report 2017. We'll define the purpose and aim of the service, describe the eligibility and the referral process, and then finally, Beth will give you some great examples in terms of the service structure, the potential support, and the interventions. What I'll say here is that don't worry about taking notes. You will get a recording of today's webinar, so if you did ever want to view this again, then by all means feel free to do so. In addition to that, you'll get copies of the slides and some copies of our promotional literature too, which can also be viewed within the handout section of Webinar Jam, or the files section of Webinar Jam. In addition to that, there is an option for questions at the very end, so please hang fire with writing any questions within the chat box function until we notify you to do so. And at the very end of today's session, we will review all of those and answer all of those questions that you may have. Finally, in terms of today's webinar, it's all about us educating you about the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service. You know, this is a service that's available to you and your organisation, but more importantly, those employees within your organisation that are experiencing difficulties with a mental health concern that's affecting their performance or attendance at work. We're not here to sell you a product, we're here just to educate you about the service to ensure that you're making the most of it going forward. At the very end of the session, when you do get that recap email from Beth and I, you'll have an invitation to have a conversation with us about potentially working in partnership so that we can support you through every single step of the way to ensure that you're making the most of it going forward. Alternatively, you may wish to take all of this information away today and to start utilising the service without even having any conversations with Beth or I going forward. I'm hopeful that by the end of this session, however, you'll find that everything that Beth and I cover, you'll find really useful. So without further ado, let's move on to our first learning objective for today, which is the impact on businesses nationally. So back in 2017, the government published something called the Thriving at Work Report 2017, also known as the Stevenson and Farmer Report. It looks at how mental health is impacting on UK businesses and the economy as a whole. So if, for example, you were to Google the Thriving at Work Report, you would go through to a government website, and there you'll have a report that you can actually download or print off for yourselves. And just to highlight really as to why we have the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service, I've highlighted 5 key stats that are located within the Thriving at Work Report. Now, the first one is that 1 in 4 adults are experiencing challenges with mental health at any one time. What's more is that mental health is the leading cause of sickness absence in the UK, with 91 million days lost each year due to mental health problems. In terms of financial burden, the cost of employers is estimated at anything between 33 to 42 billion pounds each year. And in terms of the economy, it's estimated at anything between 74 and 99 billion pounds each year. And finally, 41% of employers have seen an increase in mental health related issues. So taking those stats into account, what more can be done to support those employers like your own, but more importantly, those employees, those individuals that are struggling work at the present time as a result of a mental health concern? So I'd like to introduce something to you called the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service, which is a scheme that Remploy have delivered on behalf of the Department for Work and Pensions since December 2011. Now, before I explain to you what the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service is, I think it's really important just to explain to you what Access to Work is in general. Now, if I think back to 2009 when I joined Remploy as an employment advisor, I would support people with a variety of health conditions or disabilities into mainstream employment. And sometimes those individuals may have required funding via Access to Work that may have allowed them to perform well within their job role whilst managing the symptoms of their health condition or disability. Now, more often than not, it was things such as adapted technology or equipment. So maybe a custom-built chair that would support a person's posture, height-adjustable desks, those that are a wheelchair user, software for people's computers. It could even be support workers for those with learning disabilities, or travel support to help people get to and from work each day. Access to Work will have a variety of different suppliers based upon the nature of the support that's needed. And in December 2011, Remploy was set up as the sole supplier of the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service, and it's a scheme that we're still delivering to this day. So what actually is the Access to Work Mental Health Support Service? Well, first of all, it's 100% independent and confidential. So any individual that we support, we're not allowed to inform the employer unless that individual gives us consent to do so. So many of you that are on today's webinar will be supporting individuals within your organisation without having any conversation with you, the employer, at all. The thing is that individuals will have been accessing the support independently and confidentially. Now, some of our partner employers, they may wish to benefit from quarterly reports, and those quarterly reports allow us to demonstrate the amount of referrals that are coming through to us from their organisation. What is the referral rates? What is the success rates? What are the common themes that we've noticed in terms of declared mental health conditions, a breakdown in gender, location of individuals, ethnicity, sexuality, to name a few. So, for example, that intel will be really useful for you as an organisation if you found that the majority of individuals that were accessing our support were females and hardly any males would be accessing it. Therefore, we could do some tailored communications that would be focused on the genders. So we've got that confidentiality element, and employees don't need to be concerned that we're going to divulge that we're supporting them unless they give us consent to do so. Now, the next thing in that statement on the left-hand side, the second one down, is that the support is vocational support for employees or apprentices with a mental health concern to help them retain or regain their ability to participate at work. You may be thinking now, well, what does Chris mean by vocational support? Vocational support, it simply means work-focused support. The support we offer is literally around the job. It's not clinical. It's not there to treat injury or illness itself. We're not a counselling service. Bex will give you some great examples of what our support looks like later on. But vocational support simply looks at workplace coping strategies. What's the individual having difficulty with within their job role? Is it certain responsibilities? Is it certain situations that they're finding difficult? Putting together a wealth of self-help toolkits to ensure that individual is productive within their job role. Alongside that then, you've got your condition-based coping strategies, helping the individual to understand their mental health concern. What are the triggers? What are the warning signs? What can we do to prevent this from happening? And on the days that we are feeling at their best, to ensure that their symptoms are managed. It can be worked alongside your existing employee assistance program that will be used for the likes of counselling, or indeed occupational health, or it can be used as standalone support for those individuals that may not require counselling, or those individuals that don't have a sickness absence record at the present time and just maybe require a helping hand to get through each working day. Alternatively, it can be used by individuals that are currently off sick, and it can be used to help their return to work strategy. Or alternatively, those individuals that are about to start employment with you have declared a history of a mental health concern, and this can be used to ensure that he or she doesn't experience any difficulties during that early period of employment. So you may be thinking, okay, well, this is great. What are the types of conditions with this support with? The answer to that is all mental health concerns. So more commonly, the types of conditions that we would support with is the likes of depression, stress, generalized anxiety disorder, but it covers the full range. It can be PTSD, bipolar, to name a couple. What's more, it has a 93% success or retention rate. And this is based upon individuals performing well within their job role and managing the symptoms of their condition within a 9-month support period. And the stats that we're really pleased about here within our team. Thinking about that 9-month support period, throughout that time, the service delivered by what you call vocational rehabilitation consultants, or VRCs for short. All of them have a varied background in terms of their expertise. So we've got the likes of counsellors, occupational therapists, psychologists, just to name a few. They have that knowledge, they have that expertise, but they're just applying it with much more of a vocational work-focused approach as opposed to a clinical approach. And when an individual is being supported by us throughout that 9-month support period, they will be allocated to the same VRC throughout their 9-month journey. Beth will explain a lot more about that shortly. Finally, in terms of the background to the Access to Work mental health support service, no financial contribution is required from you, the employer, or indeed the employee. It's 100% fully funded by the Department for Work and Pensions. To utilise this service, you're not going to be asked to sign any formal paperwork in terms of partnership with Remploy. No one's going to be sending you any service level agreements or invoices. Simply, you can start to utilise this service straight away, or alternatively, you can gain the support from Beth and I to ensure that we're giving you the expert consultancy to fully integrate this service within your own organisation. And again, you as an organisation wouldn't be charged by Remploy to gain the support of Beth and I. Okay, so we've looked at the background information there. We're next going to look at the eligibility and the referral process. And what you'll find here in terms of the eligibility criteria and the referral process, and it's very straightforward. Now, first of all, the eligibility criteria, there's two. First of all, an individual must be in paid employment, and alongside that, they must have a mental health concern that's affecting performance or is affecting their attendance at work. So looking at the first eligibility criteria, paid employment, this also includes apprentices. The individual can be working any hours a week, even permitted hours less than 16 hours a week. Permanent or temporary employment, they can be self-employed at the present time, so self-employed contractors. They can be employed, but they can be signed off sick. They can be redeployed or working from home. Essentially, as long as the individual is in some form of work that is paid, they can meet that first eligibility criteria. In addition to that, the individual must have a mental health concern. However, no formal diagnosis is required. So the individual doesn't essentially need to go to their GP to get a formal diagnosis in order to access our support. You can contact us that same day and have their first appointment scheduled within 48 hours. There isn't any waiting lists. It's a very quick turnaround from recognising that you need that assistance to actually receiving our support. Mental illness doesn't have to be the primary health condition, so lots of people that will access our support will have much more of a primary health condition or disability, and mental illness is only secondary to that. That's okay. As long as the individual has some form of mental health concern, they would meet that second eligibility criteria. What's more, triggers don't necessarily have to be linked to what's going on in the workplace. So let's think about the things that are going on outside of work. Is it things around finances, debt management, relationship problems, caring for sick relatives, COVID-19. If these are the things that are affecting someone's mental well-being and in turn their performance at work, then we will look at the whole lifestyle element too. It's really important, however, that the individual's mental health concern is affecting their performance or attendance at work, simply being that the service is what you call, like I said, work-focused support. It's all about the job. One other thing here before I move on to the referral process, it's not just available to those that work in the public sector, it's also available to those that are working in the private sector. It doesn't matter what industry that the individual works within. So essentially, it's not only available to you and your colleagues within your own organisation, but it's essentially available to your friends and your family too. So we've looked at the eligibility criteria then, and I'm going to start off by looking at the referral process next, which again, very straightforward. So in the file section, you've got some copies of our promotional literature, leaflets and posters there, and also what you call an employer toolkit. Everything that you would need to integrate the service within your own organisation. The leaflets include our referral process and our confidential helpline, which is 0300 456 8114, or email address, which is a2wmhss@remploy.co.uk. And those details take you direct through to our referrals team at Remploy. It's not the contact details for access to work directly. So you've got a couple of options here in terms of the referral process. Individuals can refer themselves independently and confidentially. However, a third party can make a referral on behalf of the individual as long as that individual gives verbal consent to do so. So, for example, if you're a HR business partner, if you're a line manager, if you work within occupational health, or even if you're a mental health first aider, if you're having that confidential conversation with somebody and you're explaining the service to them, as long as that individual gives you consent to do so, you can contact us on those details on behalf of that person, which I think is a lot more effective than you giving that person our details, because the likelihood of the individual contacting us themselves will be quite slim. So by all means, feel free to make that referral on their behalf. If you did want to make a referral on behalf of somebody, the only information that you would need to provide at that stage is the individual's contact details, name, email address, personal telephone number, and their employer name. And at that stage, then we would call back the individual and book in their appointment. Now, stepping aside from that, also employers, again, at no cost to you, you can have what you call virtual mental health support clinics. And that looks like where we allocate your team, your organisation, a team of what you call vocational rehabilitation consultants. Essentially, you've got your own team of mental health experts that would run a mental health support clinic that individuals within your organisation can book onto every single month and get some one-to-one advice and support as part of this service. So if you did want to benefit from those virtual mental health support clinics, in addition to this ad hoc referral process that I've just spoken about, then please feel free to get in touch with Beth and I, and we can look to support you in getting that up and running within the next 4 weeks. Now, when individuals themselves contact us, Beth's going to describe now the questions that we would ask, just to ensure that we would check the individual's current circumstances and their eligibility for support. And then Beth will move on to give you some common examples of the customer journey and what those support and interventions look like. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Beth, if that's okay.
Lovely, thanks, Chris. So yeah, once we do get hold of someone to speak to them about their circumstances, there's a few things that we're going to check. So the first is to kind of get an overview of, if they're eligible. So are they in paid employment, and are they struggling at work because of their mental health? And if the answer is yes, then we will go on to get more details about that, like following some of the questions that are on the screen now. So asking about a brief description in relation to the individual's duties and responsibilities, asking them about their mental health and exactly how it affects them at work. You know, what are those triggers? What are those early warning signs? And, you know, is it affecting their performance? Is it affecting their attendance? And trying to gain a picture of how it's affecting them most. We'll also ask them about, you know, is their employer aware of the difficulties they're facing? Because we could help them to have that, what could be a difficult conversation. It might actually be a first step in their support journey, you know, helping them to disclose their mental health to their employer. Or you may have someone that's actually already having conversations with their employer about their mental health and stress, and they may have already made recommendations for support and adjustments, or even helping them to get back to work at the present time. And we can help to review those adjustments that are in place and see if there's anything else that we can think of that might be able to support them within the workplace. We'll also ask people if they have a clear idea of what they need. So this is very much an employee-led service, and we always try to get them to take ownership and try and get them to give us some ideas about what sort of support and adjustments they would like. However, it's not always possible to get everything in place that they might wish. So it's about looking at what is reasonable for the organisation, for the individual, and helping to come to that happy medium. We also take details around national insurance number and individual learner record number for apprentices, which I believe is on their enrolment paperwork. And these details are key in order for us to complete the referral at this stage. So once we've taken all that information, it does get sent to Access to Work to kind of say, you know, this is the support that this individual needs on the programme, and they will ask for those details. So if you are encouraging someone to give us a call, just ask them to have that to hand. So when we do take someone's details and they're eligible for the service, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to book them in for a telephone assessment with their VRC. Now, the telephone assessment isn't to assess whether or not someone's eligible for the service. We've already established that on the referral call. What we're looking at here, well, what we're trying to achieve is kind of building that relationship between the VRC and the individual themselves, and trying to figure out exactly what it is that they need throughout the 9-month support journey so that it can be documented on what we call an individual support plan. So that support plan will lay out exactly the difficulties that someone's facing against what we think we can do to help them over the support journey. So again, that is something that's sent to Access to Work, but we don't send it to Access to Work until it's been approved by the individual themselves, and that takes place in their first face-to-face appointment. Now, the first thing that you need to know is that at the moment, anything that I refer to as face-to-face is still virtual. So we're using the likes of Teams, Zoom, or even WhatsApp video, if that's what people feel most comfortable with. But we will be letting our partner organisations know once we are moving back to face-to-face. But that first meeting still serves the same purpose. It's there to kind of kickstart that support. You know, we review the support plan, we gain consent as to whether or not we can engage with the employer and things like that. And it's from that first face-to-face meeting that the 9-month journey begins. So that first month of us getting to know the individual, the administration, and taking the referral details, it doesn't chip away any of that valuable support time, which is really good. So what does that 9 months look like? So it's broken down into 6 months intense support and 3 months lighter touch support. So for the 6 months intense, an individual should expect fortnightly contact from their VRC to review all of the things which are listed on their support plan, and to kind of check in on well-being, action any issues that arise within the workplace, and generally offer that coaching in regards to workplace support on a regular basis. We also offer an additional face-to-face meeting between the 1 and 6 month stage if it's required. That's actually, you know, because we are working virtually at the moment, what might have been one face-to-face employer meeting previously, you know, the virtual working allows us to meet with employers a lot more regularly over the likes of Teams, which is really good. And I'm sure most organisations will still have that facility even when we do go back to face-to-face. But we also have a meeting at 6 months. So you've kind of got 3 face-to-face appointments during that first 6 months. And the 6-month appointment is to review how well someone's coping with their condition and to ensure that all support is in place, ready to move them to light touch support. Now, light touch support is monthly support from a different team of advisors who will contact them to kind of just check in and just monitor how they're getting on, really. And if they do need additional support, such as re-engage with the employer, or they've just gone off sick again and need some support to get back to work, there is that option to transfer them back to their original VRC. But the purpose of that final 3 months is, well, it's hoped that the change in frequency and the change of advisor helps to phase out that support period. As I'm sure you'll agree, 9 months is quite a long time. So we try to phase that out. If someone does require another period of support after they've had their 9 months with us, then Access to Work asks for a change in circumstance. So that could be anything from someone's kind of mental health changing in some way, or it may be that someone's just returned to work in month 8 and they've been presented with a whole new set of challenges, or it could be that someone's job role's changed, or they may have even changed organisation altogether, and that could potentially warrant another period of support. If there isn't that change of circumstance available, then what Access to Work would ask of us is that we encourage them to get back in touch in 3 months' time to see if they could potentially get some differing support from another organisation, or to try and be independent for that short period before getting back in touch with us. There we go. So although everyone receives the same support in terms of timescales, so everyone gets that 9-month support from us, what we do during that 9-month support period really does vary from individual to individual. So what you've got on the screen here are just some of the support and interventions that we might use to help someone when they're on programme with us. So one of the things is what we call a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. So if you've never heard of one of these documents, they're a really useful resource that looks at early warning signs, triggers, helps someone to establish their baseline, so what they're feeling like when they're well, what are we really trying to achieve, what are we trying to get them back to within the workplace. And it also allows for some crisis planning as well. So, is there someone that, is likely to perhaps have a panic attack at work, and how would they like their immediate team or line manager to deal with that in that situation? And that could all be documented on a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. All of our mental health and stress related resources as well, such as the RAP document, they're all on our online wellbeing platform, which is something which we encourage people to sign up to in their first face-to-face meeting with us. And it's got all of our mental health and stress related resources, as well as general wellbeing support, whether it be that someone's looking for healthy recipes or some guidance around stopping smoking, or just general goal setting in day-to-day life. There's lots of resources on there to support with that. There we go. In regards to reasonable workplace adjustment, so this is a big part of what we do, and Chris has already mentioned how we're likely to engage with the employer at different stages and things, and we'll always try and work collaboratively where possible. Of course, some people would prefer more distant support, such as access to the online wellbeing platform and things like that, and just regular coaching over the phone. But some people really might need a return to work plan, and for us to help to look at those reasonable workplace adjustments. Now, by no means can we come in and enforce. So we can't come in and say, you've got to put this adjustment in place. We don't come in that kind of union representative capacity, but we will always try to kind of reach like a reasonable agreement around what can be done to support someone. So to give you an example, and this is also an example of when we've worked with occupational health. So I once worked with an NHS trust actually whose occupational health department had recommended additional breaks for someone. And the line manager, wasn't even really prepared to have this discussion with the individual, as they thought that it's not in their staffing levels to have that adjustment in place. But all it needed was a quick conversation with the individual themselves, and that's what we helped with. So the individual said that they didn't actually need a break in the break room with their feeder. What they needed was a break from a certain activity that they was doing each day. So they was responsible for kind of back-to-back clinics, which they were finding quite intense. So all they needed was a kind of a 20-minute admin break in the morning and a short break in the afternoon to do kind of other project work and things like that. And as soon as the line manager became aware of this, they were more than happy to support, but they was just kind of worried about having that conversation in the first place and how it would affect the wider team. So we, in that instance, because they'd given us consent to do so, we were able to feed back to occupational health and let them know the outcome. And they were really happy with the support that we'd offered in regards to kind of bridging the gap, really, being that middleman in regards to getting the support implemented. We'll also support people to get support from the wider access to work scheme in place if required. So it may be that someone needs travel support or a job coach or training, and we could make someone aware as to what's on offer, and they could put in an application for this support. So it is all subject to application, and as Chris has already mentioned, we're quite unique in the fact that it's always fully funded. It's not always the case with the wider access to work scheme, so we will have a conversation with people about that and see what's on offer for them. But to give you another little example before we move on to the next slide, I previously supported someone whose mental health wasn't their primary health condition. So they actually had been off work because of Parkinson's, and they'd had their license removed. So one of their biggest anxieties was, how am I going to get to work now? Because, there's no trains to that area. I don't drive. I'm not actually really close to my colleagues to ask to car share. What can I do? And she was really pleased to hear that, travel support was on offer from Access to Work, especially as she had that diagnosis for that physical health condition. So that was something that we were able to help her with, as well as some of the things under the signposting section. So we're not a signposting service, but if someone does come to us and they have a different condition that we might not claim to be an expert in, because it's outside of the mental health side of things, we will signpost to local charitable organisations where appropriate. So for this individual, they'd never actually met anyone else with Parkinson's, and they thought they was alone with it, and it was a big part of them kind of coming to terms and coping with their condition. And we actually got them in touch with their local Parkinson's support group, and we were able to get them in touch with people that was going through the same thing, and that also supported their mental health in the long term. So it just shows how we try and look at things quite holistically when people are on programme. You can also see under signposting things such as employee assistance programmes. So if you were to work in close partnership with us, we'd always try and get information out to our VRCs around what your organisation has on offer, so that we can ensure that they're aware of everything that they can recommend to the individuals that have referred from your organisation. On the screen here, you've got just a few of the coping strategies that people might say to us when they give us a call in that first instance for the referral call. So they might say, I'm really struggling with dealing with change, or I'm usually quite productive at work, however I'm struggling with time management at the moment and it's not my confidence. Or someone might say, I'm really worried about another health condition at work because I'm not managing my treatment and medication very well. And to give you a little bit of an example here, and by no means are we a clinical service or are we going to advise on anything medical or anything like that, but there was a lady that I supported once who kind of worked on the shop floor, but she had diabetes, and she'd been told, it's not within company policy to carry any sort of snack or drink or anything around with you. So she hadn't even told her employer about the fact that she had diabetes, and that her GP had recommended that she keep a sugary snack with her in case her sugar levels were to drop. or to keep like certain medication on her as well on the shop floor. So it was just about us encouraging them to have that conversation, build their confidence, and help them to have it. And as soon as we did help them to have that conversation, the line manager was more than happy for them to carry something round with them to support that management of that other health condition. And that reduced the anxiety and stress associated with going to work each day. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap now, and then we're going to show you a quick video which hopefully summarises all of the things that we've been through today. So hopefully myself and Chris have provided you with a detailed overview of the Access to Work mental health support service available to employees and apprentices across England, Scotland and Wales. So we've gone through the facts and stats around mental health, which can be found by a quick Google search of the Thriving at Work report. We've defined the purpose and the aim of the service, which is to support people over a 9-month period with vocational support to either help them to stay in work or return to work if they've been off sick. And that support is provided by a team of VRCs, and it's all fully funded. In order to be eligible, you have to be in paid employment and struggling at work because of your mental health. But it can be any hours, any type of contract, attending work or signed off sick. Mental health doesn't have to be your primary health condition, and triggers can be external to the workplace. When you come onto programme, it's 6 months intense support, 3 months light touch. It's all self-referral, but you can make that referral on someone's behalf if you've got their verbal consent. And then once someone is on the programme with us, all of the support is tailored to them. So no one person's support journey is likely to be the same as anyone else's. So at this stage, perhaps start having to think of any questions that you've got and start popping them in the chat box following the video. But we hope that you've enjoyed so far, and you'll see the clip shortly. Thank you.
It's just a normal day. All work and no play. All of a sudden, I feel numb. Recently, everything seems glum. It's 10 AM. My next meeting is due. Put my camera on, muddle on through. Each time I speak, my throat feels dry. I just feel like I'm living a lie. My manager notices, bags under my eyes. She questions me, and I start to cry. I admit to her, I have not slept, and confess how my anxiety has crept. I can feel the shaking in my hands. My chest feels heavy as we make plans. My manager makes a referral to the Access to Work mental health support service. I feel nervous. I get a telephone appointment. They tell me they support mental health in employment. I'm introduced to their consultant, who makes me feel I am important. As I start to explain what I'd most like to gain, she completes a support plan for me, which is as personalised as can be. For 6 months, I can see I get contacted bi-weekly with different resources and advice. I slowly start to regain my life. As my mental health improves, my anxiety, it starts to lose. I move on to the light touch team, and once a month they contact me. Through their continued support, I can battle any negative thought. When my 9 months comes to an end, my mental health becomes my friend. Contact our Access to Work mental health support service team today.
Thank you for viewing today's webinar, everyone. And now I'm going to hand back over to yourselves for some questions. So let me just make sure I can get them all in order. We're just going to review your chat box now, and then we can come to each one of those. Okay. Paul asks, Paul Clayton, is it possible to download this presentation? The answer to that is yes. There is in the employer toolkit that you've got within the file section of Webinar Jam, there's a copy of today's slides. When you do get the recap email, you'll also get a recording of today's session. Plus also, if you do want some PowerPoint versions of the presentation slides, you can gain access to that too. If you did want this presentation to be delivered, however, to your own organisation, Paul, then please just get in touch and we can do that, no problem at all. Next one. Paul has asked another question. Is there an expectation for time within their job to work with VRCs? Do you want to answer that one, Beth?
Yeah, so if you mean like time out of their working day, so one of our employer partners we've worked with for a long time, they will sometimes allow for time out of the working day or treat it as in the same sort of way as if it was like a GP appointment or something like that. However, our VRCs are quite flexible with appointments. So, if someone says, oh, my lunch hour is at 12 or I've got a non-working day, on a Tuesday or something like that, we'll always try to accommodate them. We tend to work Monday to Friday, between the hours of 8 and 6. We have people that start a little bit early and finish a little bit later like that. And so we'll try and accommodate people there.
Thanks, Beth. And that also probably answers the question asked by Keith about the flexibility in terms of the face-to-face appointments. So like Beth says there, it's very employee or what we call customer-led. So we work around their working schedule. Helen then asks, are you linking up with NHS staff resilience hubs, which provides mental health support to health and social care staff? Predominantly with NHS trusts that we work with, it's more or less the occupational health teams, or if you have them, a health and wellbeing team. It would be great to link up with the NHS staff resilience hubs. So if you do have any details to share with us, Helen, that would be very much appreciated. It'd be great to work with them. Do you want to pick up the next one, Beth?
Yeah, so we've got the next question is, can you sign up multiple members at one time? And the answer is yes. A lot of our partner employers, we'll get quite a few referrals from them per month, and we do have to see all of our customers within that 30 days from when they first refer up to us. So you can send through as many people as you feel need the service within your organisation. That's absolutely fine. Everything is one-to-one based, so it's not like group sessions or anything like that, which I'm sure you've gathered from the presentation, as it is an anonymous service. So yeah, hopefully that gives you confidence to refer them all through to us.
Next one's from Casey. How would your support if it becomes clear that the workplace is significantly contributing to a person's poor mental health by not adhering to its current obligations? Do you want to give an example of that, Beth, if you don't mind, from a VRC perspective?
Yeah, sure. So in regards to kind of getting involved with formal processes and things like that, say, for example, someone's put in a grievance because they're not happy with how they've been treated at work, we unfortunately wouldn't be able to come and represent in a kind of like represent them in kind of a, I can't think of the word off the top of my head, like an ambassador or anything like that. But what we would do is we would try and give some advice around adjustments that we feel would be reasonable within that workplace, and try and have that conversation with the employer. It might be that they've not had the support to that point, but they perhaps have asked for things that are a little bit unreasonable or something like that, and we can try and help them to build that relationship with them. If the employer is the source of the problem, then on this program, it's not the sort of program where we'd help people to find work elsewhere or encourage them to leave their job. It's It's trying to help them to build those relationships and support them in the job that they're in. So we would just kind of take it week by week and support them to build up those relationships in the first instance at work, give our recommendations, and perhaps even get them in touch with a union representative who might be able to look at the company policies and things like that, or see if there's any external organisations that might be able to help them if they don't have a union rep. So it might even be something like ACAS, and we would just provide that continuous follow-up. So a lot of the time people will reach out to other organisations for help or think of doing so, but they'll be even more inclined to do so if they've got someone contacting them every fortnight saying, did you reach out to your union rep about that support, or did you have that conversation with your line manager that we spoke about on the last call? And it's providing that continuous follow-up, which we hope helps, even though we can't kind of go in and tell them what they should be doing.
Thanks, Beth. The next question is from Hazel. And can parents with their young adult child consent and refer to the service? So essentially, any third party can make a referral on behalf of the individual, as long as the individual gives verbal consent to do so. So it could be your husband, it could be your wife, it could be a son or daughter. If they're not happy or comfortable to refer themselves, then by all means feel free to make that referral, as long as they, however, give consent to do so. That's really important. The next question of Nefra, would you like to pick that one up, Beth?
Yeah, so it says, do you have any evidence of mental health issues related not to working per se, but to having to return to travelling to work as opposed to working from home? If so, what remedies are there other than time? So I think this is going to be a common thing, and it could be something that Chris and I go back and try and get some examples of, because obviously we're not doing the supporting firsthand, but I've managed a team of VRCs previously, and I know one of the biggest things for them is that at the moment people are struggling with going back to face-to-face, not always necessarily in regards to that travel to work, but just going back to that face-to-face setting in general, when we've all been working flexibly from home and in various environments for the last 18 months. So it is something that we're supporting people with. If they do have severe anxiety around the travel, so it might be like getting the tube or getting the train, then they may be eligible for those taxis to work that I mentioned. This question might have come through before that, but it's not always a physical health condition that you've got to have in order to apply for taxis to work. I have supported people previously that have got taxis to work through the Access to Work scheme, fully funded, because of the anxiety associated with getting to work on public transport, and even driving to work and having to find a parking space, and essentially having a knock-on effect for their whole day. So I'd say that is probably something that we'd look at, potentially alongside having a discussion around hybrid working with the employer and things like that, and helping to build people's confidence and looking after their general anxiety and things like that, if that is a link to why they don't want to travel, to try and get to kind of the root of the cause there as well. So we'd come at it from a number of angles.
That kind of also answers Megan's question about anxieties about going back into the workplace and travelling to the workplace, and if we'd be able to fund, or Access to Work should say, would be able to fund driving lessons. I don't think they'd be able to fund driving lessons, but like Beth said, if someone's anxiety is about travel to and from the workplace, then, for example, taxis could potentially be funded. And that isn't something that we would supply, but the wider Access to Work service would. So it's definitely worth looking into. The next question here is, are you able to access the wellbeing portal as an employer? The answer to that is unfortunately no. When somebody accesses our support, they're given their own unique login details for Revitalised, and that's simply for them to use as an individual or a customer of our service. However, having said that, this portal is developed by our sister organisation at Revitalised, and so if you did want to explore how you can have a specific model for your own organisation, then just respond to our email, and then we can put you in touch with the right person to have a chat with that.
if we were to work in partnership with you as well, and we have a meeting over Teams or anything like that, myself and Chris could always give you a demonstration, show you kind of what it looks like. It's just that you wouldn't have access, so you could have a glimpse of what it's about for sure. We've got another question on here around BSL. So do we provide accessible services for deaf customers? And the answer is yes. So we have access to a BSL service which we fund, or it might even be that someone needs a lip speaker service. There's various support out there for people with a hearing impairment, and we take care of that from our side. We don't provide any other sort of interpreter service though, so if it's for any other language apart from English and Welsh, it would be up to the individual themselves to provide an interpreter for that.
Thanks, Beth. Next question from Peter. Earlier in the presentation, it was made clear that the service is anonymous with no reporting, yet a national insurance number or similar is required. Now, as mentioned earlier on in the presentation, the service is 100% fully funded, and that means we don't need to come to the employer to say, we're supporting your employer, Joe Bloggs, and it's going to cost X amount of money for us to support that person. Somehow we have to draw that funding from the Department for Work and Pensions in order to support that individual. And the only way that we can do that process-wise is to get the individual's national insurance number. It's not for us to divulge to the employer that we're supporting that individual or to divulge to any other third parties. It's just allowing us the financial means in order to support that person. Got a few comments here about the video as well. We get a lot of good feedback about the video, and we can share that in a recap email too. So there is a version, or the latest version that you've just seen on our YouTube channel, which is Remploy TV. So if you go to Remploy TV on YouTube, and it was only posted earlier today, so you've got that there. But if you did ever want a hard copy of that video for storing within, for example, your organisation's own intranet page, then that is available to you. So we'll happily share that. It's really powerful, that video. We think it's great. And Beth, do you want to cover Craig's?
Yeah. So
for 9 months.
So in regards to if someone needs more support after the 9 months, if they've had a change in circumstance, such as a change in job role, duties and responsibilities, and perhaps an unfortunate deterioration in their mental health, then we may be able to ask access to work for another period of support. We just have to explain to them potentially what we're going to do differently a second time round, because there's no option to just extend it by like 3 months or anything like that. If there haven't been a change in circumstance and it's more so that someone just needs ongoing support with the same issues, then we'll ask them to get in touch in 3 months' time. It might be that they do need a slightly different support service if the vocational support hasn't covered everything within the 9 months. You know, do they need to reach out to some clinical services, or do they just need to try and build their confidence with going it alone for 3 months, as they have got used to having us around? But there is that option to come back. So it's not like once you've had this service once, that's it forever. You know, we understand that people change job roles and, you know, they have new challenges. So there is that option to re-refer if the changes have happened.
Thanks, Beth. I am conscious of time. There's only 6 minutes left. So if you can hang fire from asking more questions at the present time, but don't worry, if you do have other questions that you want to ask, then please feel free to get in touch after today's webinar, and Beth and I will be happy to answer those for you. So we'll quickly go through the remainder of today's questions. Gary, for example, asks, a lot of people are afraid to access service due to being labelled. Of course. Does this at any point go on their records, like a GP record, for example? No, it doesn't, Gary. Our systems aren't linked, for example, to the individual's GP records. We have our own in-house system, and the data of that isn't shared with any third parties. Daisy's question, do you want to pick that up, Beth? Yeah,
so Daisy's question is around like VRC qualifications and experiences. You know, do they have any specific approaches they use in the support plan? So in regards to our VRCs, they come from a variety of employment backgrounds. You know, it may be that some are accredited by the British Psychological Society, and they've come from that background in working within that counselling setting. Although we're not a clinical service, we have those expertise within the team. It may be that they come from more of a physical rehabilitation background or mental health training and consultancy. I mean, I was a VRC myself a few years ago, and I'd very much kind of been trained by Remploy. So I'd done a degree in psychology, had been trained to support people with learning difficulties and dyslexia and things like that at work, getting all of their equipment and software in place. And then I moved into the mental health side of things. So there's a lot of in-house training that goes on as well. In regards to the approaches using the support plan, they're all tailored to the individual's needs. So we don't advise that we'll be giving CBT or like kind of any sort of systematic therapy approach that Daisy's asked about there. But we will support people to find that kind of more structured clinical therapeutic support elsewhere if it's needed, and we'll stick to the vocational side of things. So there's a wealth of knowledge and expertise within the team to tap into, but there's not one set qualification or degree that someone has to have.
Thanks, Beth. Helen asks, do you take on clients that have severe mental illness as well as, for example, personality disorder? Yes, as long as the individual meets the eligibility criteria of having a mental health concern that's affecting their performance or attendance at work, then they would indeed meet the eligibility criteria. Greg asks a question about EAP. Beth?
Yeah, so in regards to EAP, we'll always actually encourage people to access the EAP alongside us if they need that, if they need support around other issues. So we know a lot of a lot of EAP services offer support around like financial advice. It might even be relationships and things like that. And sometimes there's course of 6 weeks counselling and things depending on the package that you have. So we will always encourage them to access that, because it is different to ourselves. Ours is that longer term support, which is more practical and hands-on with the employer. But the EAP provides broader support in regards to a large topic, a large kind of range of topics and things like that. And as I say, sometimes that clinical counselling and things that people might need. So we do kind of see that they work alongside each other and alongside occupational health, which is that more clinical support to support people in all areas.
Thanks, Beth. EAP. How long do we hold the person's file after the 9 months? I think we keep them for about 12 months afterwards. The reason being is it's just so obviously that we're achieving information governance requirements set by our own organisation and the DWP. But also, in addition to that, if the individual ever needs to access our support again, then we've got that audit trail. Okay, I think there's a few questions here that we've already answered. I'm trying to see if there's one now that isn't similar that we can finish off with. Maybe the one from Alana about NHS trusts. Can you provide some further detail on how you work with NHS occupational health consultants? So, for example, with the NHS trusts that we work with across the UK, Great Britain, should I say, we support those occupational health practitioners in terms of supporting their patients. The best way to describe that is in 2 phases. So phase 1 being the clinical element of support provided by those practitioners. But as the individual is on the cusp of returning to the workplace, we would then pick up at that vocational work-focused approach to ensure that once the individual is back in work, that they're actually staying in work and they're not going off sick again and going back to square one. So that completes today's webinar at 2 o'clock. The last thing I want to say is thank you everyone for joining us today. Look out for that recap email. Please feel free to start utilising this service going forward. And alternatively, if you do wish to work in partnership with us and work alongside Beth and I so that we can give you the best possible advice and guidance towards integrating the service, then please do get in touch with us. It'd be great to hear from you. Well, have a great afternoon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.